Okay. Season of Gifts, Chapter 10. I have a new phone, so we shall see how it works. Chapter 10, One Too Many. This is a great one. This crazy computer. Okay. All right. The Shellabarger place was known for miles around. Abraham Lincoln had slept in the milk house on his way to Bement. That was when the milk house was a log dwelling. Old man Shellabarger had built the present structure in 1878 with gingerbread porches and a tower as tall as a silo. The pickle had gas in it now, but Dad never thought about driving. We ran all the way, kicking through the leaves of the sleeping town. At the Shellabargers, the porch light lit the yard. A car was piled up on the foot of the front steps. It had swerved off the road, jumped the ditch, bounced off the mounting block, and plowed a furrow across the lawn. A car door was off and over by the flower bed. The frame was way out of whack. The car was scrap iron now and hadn't been worth much before it had tried to climb the Shellabarger's front steps. An old DeSoto with mud flaps and a pair of squirrel tails. One-eyed, as I recalled it, with a slipping clutch and a Hollywood muffler. The tailgates were still on, but the driver was long gone. We hit the porch steps at a gallop. Miss Flora Shellabarger swung open the tall front doors. Phyllis was on the settee in a big, shadowy front room. She had an ice pack on her head and both eyes were already black. Her skirt was ripped. Her sock-hop socks weren't so fresh now. She looked pale and washed out, even with lipstick on. The minute she saw Mother and Dad, she felt a lot worse and fell back, clutching her head carefully. Mother and Dad moved up on her. They checked her over and felt her head under the ice pack. They lifted her chin and examined her black eyes. She looked somewhat dazed. She looked like a somewhat dazed muskrat in barrettes. Mother looked long and hard at her. Sock hop, Mother said. Phyllis shrank only a little. Mrs. Dowdle and Miss Cora Shellabarger barged in behind us. They'd fallen back in the dash across town. Mrs. Dowdle could have kept up, but Miss Cora was wearing yarn house slippers with pom-poms. Mrs. Dowdle filled up every space, even in this vast room. She lifted her nose, and her specs gleamed. "What's that smell?" she inquired. Miss Flora stiffened. There were a lot of smells. It was an 80-year-old house and a couple of 80-year-old women. "Smells like a brewery," Mrs. Dowdle observed. "I wouldn't say no to a Miller High Life myself, after that sprint across town." "Well, I never," Miss Flora yanked her bathrobe ties tight. "Mrs. Dowdle, I'll have you know, Papa was a teetotal and Mama was a founding member of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. I myself turned down a perfectly good offer of marriage from a man because he drank." "Orville Butts," Mrs. Dowdle recalled. "Never you mind who it was," Miss Flora snapped, cutting short the local history. "Liquor never crossed our threshold. This is a Methodist home." Miss Flora was a lot feistier than Miss Cora, but Mrs. Dowdle waved her away. "I'm talking about that girl right there." She pointed past us at Phyllis, growing smaller on the settee. "She's had one too many." Silence fell hard. The mantelpiece clock ticked off several slow seconds. Then Mother turned on me, of all people. "Bob, go straight home," she said. "And in our haste, we'd forgotten about Ruth Ann, left all alone. Cut right along, in case she wakes up." I held my ground. I wanted to know what would happen next. I was all ears. "Bob, go now," Mother said. So I had to, which I didn't think was fair. Ruth Ann was sawing logs and slept like one. Anyway, they were just trying to get rid of me. Dad pointed out the door. But in the long run, it didn't matter. I heard all about it. I mean, who didn't? Grade school kids, hermits, the hard of hearing, everybody. As a rule, Miss Cora and Miss Flora would have been the last to know, but this happened on their doorstep and knocked them out of bed. No story moves faster than one about the bad boy and the preacher's daughter. You could pick up 6 or 8 versions at the Dairy Queen alone. But where to begin? Might as well start with the car, the one-eyed DeSoto. When it had been towed, Police Chief C.P. Snokes noted that it wasn't registered to anybody. That meant it was the Burdicks. Anything missing throughout the county, from a handsaw to a corn crib, ended up at the Burdicks. Besides, everybody knew the driver was Roscoe Burdick. Blue-eyed and green-eyed Roscoe Burdick, who'd welcomed me to town by half drowning me, then hanging me out to dry in the Dowdle privy. That Roscoe Burdick. He was at the wheel and drunk as a skunk when he lost control of the DeSoto on homecoming night and plowed that furrow up into the Shellabarger porch steps. Phyllis flew out, lighting headfirst on the first concrete step. but how she happened to be there and not at the sock hop made for a longer story. First of all, Roscoe Burdick had sideburns down to here and shirts unbuttoned down to there. He seemed to know all the verses of the song Ready Teddy, and he owned a pair of blue suede shoes. He was about as Elvis as Phyllis would ever get. Waynetta Blaylock had always thought that she had Roscoe pretty well sewed up. She told the whole high school that she could make something out of him, Burdick or not. Waynetta's mother naturally wouldn't let a Burdick on the porch, but that only made Roscoe more interesting to Waynetta. Her plan was to graduate and then start to look seriously at silver patterns. That means get married. But from that night before school started, when Roscoe saw Phyllis strolling past the Dairy Queen, it was a whole new ball game. Of course, he was pushing 20, but that's the age Phyllis thought she was, in her head. She'd been sneaking out with him all fall. They'd been spotted at the tractor pull as far away as Rantoul. In fact, on homecoming sock hop night, he'd taken her over to the Decatur Drive-In to see an Elvis double feature, Loving You and King Creole. We'd been peppered with clues all fall, but Mother and Dad didn't pick up on them since Phyllis was only 14. Waynetta had, of course. She'd been sitting home with nobody to sneak out with and getting ready to blow her top. So in time, I guess she would have blackened both of Phyllis's eyes if those porch steps hadn't done it for her. On Sunday, Mother meant to drag Phyllis out of bed and make her go to church to show her shameful face to the world. But Phyllis threw up right at her. Oh boy, she was sick all day. I thought it was root beer, she groaned, but she got no sympathy. If I believed this would teach you a lesson, young lady, Mother said, I'd be happier than I am. I was sent up with Sunday dinner on a tray, liver and onions, pickled beets, and vinegar slaw. Their smell and the stomach-pink walls of Phyllis's room were a bad combination. She was sick all over again. I edged the tray onto the bed, just trying to be helpful. I'll never eat again, she said from deep in her damp pillow. Take it away. Where am I going to put it? Don't make me tell you. Mother and Dad say that we may have to leave town thanks to you, I pointed out to her. They say we haven't set a good example for the community, and all eyes are upon us. Also, liquor was involved. I thought it was root beer, Phyllis moaned. Yeah, you said that, I answered. If those two old biddies, those Schellenbarger sisters, would just keep their trap shut, we could forget all about it, Phyllis said. But they won't. Also, liquor was involved, I reminded her. And that old battle-axe Mrs. Dowdle is everywhere I turn, Phyllis griped. She's all over me like white on rice, I said. Like what? White on rice. It's one of her sayings. Oh, I hate this podunk town. I can't tell you how much. And Mother and Dad are prejudiced against Roscoe. Everybody is. Nobody understands him. Everybody understands that he cut out and ran when he piled up the car and left you knocked cuckoo on the Schellenbarger steps, I remarked. He's sensitive, Phyllis gagged, reaching for the basin. All he needs is the love of a good woman. And then she was real sick again. On Monday morning, Phyllis, wearing sunglasses, clung to her mattress, and she said she would not be going to school ever. She was resigning from the freshman year because Waynetta Blaylock was prejudiced against her, and so was the whole town and this whole school. From the foot of her bed, Mother was telling her about how she was going to school and nowhere else. Phyllis just might be grounded for life. You never saw my mother lose her temper. It was against her beliefs, but she was blowing high sky this morning. She had a good grip on Phyllis's bed railing. Young lady, I don't know what sort of phase you're going through, and I certainly can't remember going through anything like it myself, thank goodness. But I'll tell you here and now, you're going too far, and I'm going to nip you in the bud. Even I shied at that out here in the hallway, but Phyllis didn't. Are you threatening me? She snapped from the bed. The covers were pulled up to her chin. She was all sunglasses and sassy mouth. I'm giving you fair warning, Mother said in a low, steady voice. I will take steps. Ruth Ann and Rachel sat on the bed, over across the pink stripe. Their 3 eyes took everything in. I'd only lingered a little bit at the door on my way to school, but Mother saw me with the eyes in the back of her head. She turned on me, of all people. Bob! I froze. Just how much of this whole situation did you know about, young man? Silence fell. Mother waited, her back still turned to me. 3 eyes turned on me from Ruth Ann's bed. I'm waiting.
Oh, not much, I mumbled. Just what everybody knows at school. I mean, even the country kids. Just stuff. Like Roscoe and Phyllis were spotted at the tractor pull over in Rantoul, and how she goes on a lot of hay rides, and not just the future farmers one. And of course, everybody knows Waynetta Blaylock is real sore at Phyllis for stealing. All right, I'm going. Phyllis threw off the covers and staggered blindly out of bed in her sunglasses. And off she sulked to school in a darned skirt and still looking a lot like a muskrat. Or a raccoon. Whichever one has big black eyes. We'll stop there.